Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Red Path. It's Dara here with you today, and joining me is Taylor, better known to many World Eater players as a Tread. They're naming the Discords in the Red Path and in the World Eaters Discord. I would say a fairly known member of the World Eaters community at this point. You've been around the block, you've been here for a while, but we've got you on today because you just went 5-1 at the BAO, a massive event that happens on an annual basis at this point. And I just wanted to sit down, talk with you, go through the event as we do with people who tend to do good at tournaments these days, of which, there's more and more world leaders doing good, which is great to see. But, the BAO, as I was saying, like going 5-1 at the BAO is significant. And you were telling me how stacked the lineup was before we jumped on air. But Taylor, it's awesome to have you here, man. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing great. I'm happy to have the event sort of down and done with. It was like you said, a very stacked rank of players. I touched on it and I won't go into it too far, but yeah, it was a lot of players who were top of their factions, who are in the top 50 or so in the US, right? Like just very hyper competitive meta in the Bay Area and the surrounding Sacramento and North and South Bay. So yeah, I'm doing great.
Yeah, nice, man. Pleased with the result. I probably guess at this point because going into it, were you hoping for like a 5-1, 6-0 kind of a thing, or were you just like, I just want to break even at this thing and come away happy?
It, yeah, I'd be so last 2 years at BAO, I got 16th place. And I specifically got that by going 4-1-1. That was
Right.
like my record. So I was like, I'm gonna try for 16th place again. Because if I can have a dynasty of 16th place, it's no one else is gonna try and break that. So I'll just try and hit
A
that.
dynasty of 16th place. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Um,
A unique goal, I would say.
a unique goal. I mean, listen, we all gotta set our targets on something achievable.
Yeah.
But no, I knew going in that because of the players, it was almost more based on who you get matched against,
Right.
than it was like faction matchups. So I was I have a solid game into most of them. There's a couple players who it would take. It's a Herculean effort for world leaders and me cap piloting them to overcome that person piloting their faction. Because I've matched against all of them before. And
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I've lost a GT to two of these people. I'm like, uh-oh,
You've
this
run the
is
Sims, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I was hoping for top 20 somewhere. So either 4-2 or better. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Came out of it with that result. Very high placing for yourself, which was
Hmm.
really, really awesome. And I wanted to kind of get you on as well, like obviously to talk about that, but chatting with you a little bit in the discords over the last while, like I think you've got a pretty like great attitude towards the world leaders. You're not
Mm,
necessarily always going with the we'll say the meta flow state. You're kind of like
mm,
willing to like experiment with different ideas, with different list concepts, and with different
yeah.
data sheets that people don't normally take. It's a bit of a recurring theme on the Red Path. We've had Michael on who
Yeah.
went three Maulers, two Forge Fiends, and one Dream, as I
Uh-huh.
like to call it. And like all these people who come up with really cool and innovative ideas, and I just want to kind of like get that out there more so that people don't feel like they have to be kind of pushed into a certain box or whatever.
Yeah.
But going into it, like, why don't you run us through the list that you brought to the BAO, like why you built it,
Sure.
how you kind of thought it was going to play, and all that?
Yeah. So leading up to it, just as you said, there's it's really easy to fall into the comfort zone of some of our staple units. And I'm not gonna pretend that I'm running Hell Drakes or anything. Like I'm not a master innovator in the space, but I tried, right? So I went to a bunch of RTTs and a couple of GTs like just leading up to this, trying different things, trying Demon Princes and more Mauler Fiends and trying a Forge Fiend or two just in some league games. Um, I tried way more jackals than I'm normally comfortable with. I I really respect people who can use jackals well. I am not one of them. I, I send my units Mach 12 down the battlefield, and the jackals are like, wait for me. And I don't have time for that.
Nice.
Um, but so yeah, I tried a lot of things. Ultimately, I found a pattern where when I was losing matches, it was because I was running out of physical material on the board.
Right.
So we'd get kind of down to the wire. They made some really good trades, or dice went one way or another. and either we traded equal or we traded slightly in their favor. Right, and I'm sure we've all had those games. You slam 6 exalted 8 bound into something, and then oops, like something picks them up that you didn't expect to pick
It
up.
was the wrong something to slam them into or
Yeah,
something. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's like probably a really common sentiment, as you say, for especially world leader players kind of who are newer to the competitive scene, is maybe not necessarily understanding the perfect trading positions to be in and
Mhm.
stuff. So I think, yeah, but please go on with your
Yeah.
train of thought.
No, and I mean, but on that note, is that even people will think on paper, oh, I'll trade my 8 bound for, I don't know, that land raider plus the unit inside. I mean, I've had a game where a practice game was a very, very good player, Sky Ruben, who I kill his aggressors, then you can get crazy points value. But if you're not hitting the mechanical thing you need to hit in that game, and the reprisal is going to leave you depleted of your gas, right? You're out of material now. That's going to impact the board. And all he traded was like 5 chaff units and 1 big like land raider or something. Then who cares? Doesn't matter, right? So yeah. Anyway, I did find that that's how I was losing, running out of material. And gun lines were doing a classic thing that gun lines do, where they stage essentially the same as we do, but with their guns. And they put a chaff unit out and they say, I'm on the objective, and you have to trade your chaff for their chaff. A lot of things out OCS, as you may know, or have experience, where it's like,
Racer
unless you're
OC2,
running,
baby. Never forgive and never
yeah,
forget.
that's right. So it becomes hard, right? So what I did is I skewed my list towards uh, I took a really hard look at the Master of Executions blob and Berserkers, and I asked myself, what is this really doing? This is 380 points after the points drop, right? It was 405 or something before that. And yes, it can kill a Catan, but I played it into Bully Boys, and I managed to win that game, but it was like, I barely killed Gaz. It was not a sure thing. I rolled a lot of 6s, and he rolled a lot of not 4s.
Yeah, I feel like Mo and the boys and Bully Boys is just like has no job, you know?
Yeah.
Like
He's like, maybe I kill a war boss. I don't
maybe
know,
I kill 2 mega knobs. Yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
yeah,
So
it's not good.
I'm like, why am I taking this guy? What is he here for? I can play around Catan. I can just kill everything else. And I don't need him to snipe out a character in a Wraith Blob. I can put Exalted 8 Gun into a Wraith Blob and do enough damage, right? That I'm virtually picking him up. So I dropped him, and I got so my list was Angron, a favorite of Khorne Juggerlord, which I couldn't get away from. I wanted to drop him from an efficiency standpoint, but he can cleanse, he can do stuff, he can screen, and the favorite of Khorne saved my butt 2 times in this tournament. And then Invocatus. And then just so 2 units of Jackals, 2 units of Spawn, which was a thing I'm very happy with, and it's gonna be hard for me to drop those. And then 2x3 regular 8 bound, 2x3 exalted, and 1x6 exalted. And a Hellbrute.
Hell yeah.
Because, I
Because there's
was
always the chance he gets to fight 6 times in one
that's
turn.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
I in all seriousness, for people who are like, why Hellbrute? I had 135 points left. And with 135 points, you can get a Berserker squad and nothing else, or you could get like, you don't really have yeah, I could run another unit of Spawn, another unit of Jackals, but I can't quite get to a Mauler Fiend. So it's Hellbrute.
I kind of like the
And
Hellbrute, man. You know, I'm looking at him more and more. You might change my mind today. You might have me on the Hellbrute like even
I'll
more than I already am.
I'll tell you this: he overwatched GSC Acolyte Blob in a test game. Wiped 8 of them. It was amazing.
Oh,
They
you got the
came
double
down,
fist, double flamer,
and I
right?
double flamer,
Nice.
fucking
Yeah.
killed him. I killed. He overwatched some breachers too, and like killed 6 of them. It was amazing. Otherwise, he cleansed once or twice. That was cool.
I mean, the fact that he unlocks Overwatch is like, something our army can do.
Yeah,
It ain't nothing, you
it
know?
ain't nothing.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of players will just like forget that like that is a thing that can happen
Oh,
from the world leaders
absolutely,
player, you know?
absolutely. I remind them. So sometimes we'll be moving like there was like a Knight Lancer who was moving. I was like, I could Overwatch. He's like, what?
Watch out, bro.
Yeah, hey, just so you know, be careful there, buddy. Um,
Love it. Love it. Gotta get
but
those psyops going.
you got to get him going. I will say, just to cap off the Hellbrute, he did do a really good job of essentially filling in the back of my waves, right? So the whole strategy with this list is I have more pieces than I normally do, so that I can afford to send out spawn to be on objectives. They get shot, they die, I sticky it. I can screen out deep strikes. I can trade material, and if I push real heavy on offense, I still have material to cleanse, to deploy, to do whatever I might need to do, engage and stuff like that. And that Hellbrute did a really great job of walking on to get me engaged or to get me something so that the 8-bound and primarily the Exalted can move forward and go do their job, inflicting horrible violence further in the enemy lines as opposed to there. And then the Hellbrute is not like a squad of jackals. Like, they have to commit something to kill that thing,
Yeah,
and it'll
it's like
pick
what,
up.
T9, 2-up armor? It ain't easy to
Yeah.
kill.
Yeah. And then as long as you stop talking there and don't allow your opponent to ask any more questions about how many wounds it has, they'll be scared of it.
Note where I stopped.
Yeah. Those have a 2-up armor and they go invul, and you're like, sorry.
What's an invul?
What's that? I didn't hear you. Did you say invul? No. Yeah, exactly. So
It's cool
I don't
list
know. It
though.
was
I
fun.
mean, like honestly, I know it's gonna well, it probably won't seem weird to you, but like to people watching, my favorite part about this list is that you've got double jackals and double spawn.
Mm,
Because like I was talking about this a lot with Brian in the last video we did where we were talking about his run at CTC, and we talked a lot about the tempo and how you can set tempo with units like spawn and with jackals. But because you've got even more than normal, you've got that extra unit of spawn where most people don't. You
yeah.
can do some crazy cool things early in the game where you don't have to start committing until like you really want to commit. And I don't know,
Yeah.
did you find that like in your games that it gave you like a bit more control, I would say?
Oh, huge. Yeah. And I mean, that's you guys, you nailed it. And also congrats to Brian for winning that thing. That's huge. Yeah, the spawn I want 3 units of spawn. I can't oversell how valuable that they have been, because they allow me to, because I do tactical almost every time. Unless they're going to give me bring it down and assassinate. So, or unless you're playing the ritual. So when you draw a tempting target, or when you draw area denial early, or when you're needing to investigate and you need the unit with speed to get there to go do that thing, that spawn sometimes is that unit, or that spawn is able to still go on objectives. They let you do other things while you need to do important stuff, or they're able to be that sacrificial piece that's oddly hard to remove, right? With the feel no pain, that's, dude, like, people have
You
pulled
have
their
to
hair
put
out
it,
trying to kill
yeah,
this
you
thing.
have to put
Yeah.
like stupid stuff to kill that
Yeah.
spawn on the Feel No Pain, right? It's like,
Yeah.
all right, I've got these like 2 guys who are basically like, mega knobs almost. And it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
they're not necessary. I wouldn't call them hard to kill in the sense of like, if you really put anything into them, they will die. But like, they're hard to kill in the sense of they're not 10 jackals that you just look
Yeah.
at and they fall over to a couple of combi bolters, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've had opponents where they're, like, they're like, all right, I'm gonna shoot those jackals. And I'm like, how many bullets? And they're like, 12. I'm like, got it. I'll just pick them up. It's like,
Yeah.
don't worry about it. But spawn, I'm like, well, let's roll it. Let's see what
I've
happens.
I've had I've had 2 spawn stand up to a double doom bolt from Magnus,
That's
and like one
amazing.
of them's left, and I'm just like, all right, you got to charge me now, boy.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So
Yeah.
on the point of controlling that momentum, it's huge. Can't be overstated enough. And I encourage anyone out there to try it, because the difference of sacrificing a squad of 8-bound, or try and maneuver your rhino around the terrain to get there, or having to put, I mean, I'm sure people have been tempted to be like, oh, I could put Angron in there for area denial, and just exposing something that you need later to disable your opponent's ability to impact the game. Being able to instead just put those the spawn in there is huge. And then the jackals obviously give you more stickies, more favorite of Khorne, or not favorite of Khorne, but blood type dice rolls.
Yeah.
So it's good utility there. I'd be tempted to try going 3 spawn and 1 jackal, but I think the coverage that the Jackals give for deep strike denying and
Quite useful.
backfield preservation is very, very useful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool, man. Before we move on to the games, the last thing I want to pick your brain on is having dropped what I would say is probably like the most popular unit in our army outside
Mm.
of Angron in terms of
Mm.
Glaive Mo. Did
Mhm.
you find yourself like at any point regretting the lack of the fight first piece, or were you kind of just like, actually, you know what, this is totally fine?
Totally fine. Not once.
Nice. I
I
love it.
was
I love
I was
it.
matches went by and I was actively happy that he wasn't in my
Man,
list.
it's so cool. I love it,
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, so
Yeah.
let's flip on. Let's start talking about these games. Why don't you run me through, the matchups, maybe how you were
Sure.
feeling going into them, and key moments that swung it.
Yep. So my first matchup was my first loss, which was very fun to start the
I've been there. I've been there.
yeah. And I was like, well, because there's something kind of nice about winning, because you're like, cool, I can afford a loss later if I get a hard matchup, no big deal. But starting out with the L was like, cool, no pressure. I just have to win every other game. Um, but so it was against this guy, very cool guy, Matthew Tweedle, who was playing Tau. I, like a good World Eaters player, was like, I've not researched Tau at all. I don't know what you do. You're new Tau. I'm just going to run at you, and I hope that that works out, which is a very bad strategy. And I want everyone to instead read what their enemies do. And so we get to the table, and of course, the first question I ask is, "Oh, hey, nice to meet you. My name's Taylor. Do you know World Eaters?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, I'm a big World Eaters player."
I was
And I'm like,
thinking,
"Oh,
like, this guy's name is familiar to me. I feel
yeah.
like I've spoken to him.
Oh yeah." He
Yeah.
said something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, I think I finished #1 in the faction like a year or two ago." And I'm like, "Oh no." This is horrible news for me. Because when you know your opponent's army, that's your process, how you play the game, you spend way less calories on asking questions and figuring out what they do. You can look at that board and you go, I know that's going to move over here and that can trade for this. So he was like, oh no, dude, I get it, I'm good, don't even worry. He didn't even ask me to explain my army. He's like, no, go ahead.
You were worried, but in a
um
very different way.
yeah, so it was really fun. He was a great
Yeah.
guy. It ultimately, let me see, was there any actual moment in that game? Yeah, so I did a big mess up. So this was the first time we were using the FLG terrain set. This was a winnable game. I didn't check angles thoroughly enough. Um, like it was on the Sisters Cathedral set, and I just sort of like I put Angron somewhere, and I thought, that looks like he'll probably get, I don't know, a single hammerhead in range. And this guy had hammerheads and riptides galore, and breachers and everything.
Scary. I'm getting
It's so
PTSD already.
scary, man. I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, he had a line though where he could get like 3 hammerheads and 2 riptides, or no, 3 riptides, I think it was, on Angron. So I lost Angron like the first battle.
Yep.
It was just over eagerness on my part. It's a real amateur move. And at that point it was about, all right, let me try and trade up um and see what I can do. So we both ended up maxing out secondaries, but he kept me pretty low on primary. This was mission O's Vital Ground. So yeah, that ended up just costing me the game. But the cool thing was, MOE wouldn't have helped anything. Well, it would have consolidated into a devilfish.
Yeah.
He
Like,
would have,
what's he
who
gonna do?
cares?
You know?
Yeah. And it's just 10 marine bodies plus 1 double marine body. Like it's
Yeah.
literally, he's a marine with double the wounds. So it's 12 marines worth of wounds in that squad, and he's just gonna pick it up with whatever he shoots at it. Some breachers. Breachers are hitting on 2s with lethal hits. Like, this is a
Yeah, with the
crazy
craziest
army.
shotguns in the game. Those things are
Yeah,
absolutely wild.
absolutely
100
wild.
points for
So
10? Like, sure. Sure.
sure.
Why
Yeah.
not?
So anyway, I tried to stay in it, but again, I was happy I didn't waste, nearly 400 points on that squad. And that having all the extra pieces, despite being on such the back foot by losing Angron early, kept me in the game with secondaries, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like losing Angron that early and still maxing your secondaries is like
Not
it's
bad.
telling you the list is working, right?
Yeah, the mechanics are there, right? It's just
Yeah.
sort of some of the piloting. Um, yeah, and so that was fun. He was again great guy. So that was mission one. Mission two, and guys, if anyone has any questions about Tau, don't ask them because I don't have the answers. Because all I know is that they drive up in Devilfish, they get out, they just drive by, lethal hits, assault army wide. It's incredible. So instead of doing what I did, check your angles and run at them and kill them.
Yep. Make sure Angron's booty isn't poking out from behind that building because
Yeah,
he will get
yeah,
the hammerhead in the ass and it will
he
kill him.
will. I was cool with one, but 3 and 3 was no good. Um, okay, so oh yeah, sorry. I'll add the caveat. The one thing he did when I knew I lost the game was, other than when he said he was a big World Eaters player, was when he moved forward and then onto the objective and then shot me off it. I'm like, I see that you're not gonna let me sticky this objective.
Yeah, no.
You know, this is not just gonna be a sneaky freebie for me. Because like I tell everyone at the beginning, but usually they just don't want to get close. Because
Yeah.
the idea is that you lure them in with that and then hit them. But Tau had Devilfish, so they can just get out, shoot, and then they have all this artillery in the back. A lot like Imperial Guard. Okay, enough about Tau. Mission two was against Knights. It was against a very good player who went really heavy into big Knights.
Oh,
So this
that's
was
different. That's cool.
it was different and cool. And in theory, it was not a hard matchup. In theory, on paper, in practice, there was one wild point in this game. I get a little. One of the reasons I play World Eaters is I like aggression. I really enjoy when I can end the game on round like 2 or 3, and then I'm like, let's go get a beer. Like we're all done here.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah.
I don't know if my opponents always like it, but if I buy them a beer, then they like it. So I like I get a little bit wild in some of my charges. So I did some wild charges that game. It worked okay. But there's this moment where he had a Armiger, one of the melee dudes, who I charge with an Exalted 8-bound Sergeant. I take him down to like 5 wounds or so remaining because I rolled pretty bad on my attacks, and he had killed Angron, so he had his 5 up, feel no pain. Then I go in with Invocatus. He grenades, he shoots his bolt pistol for fun, and then he charges. I take him down to 1 wound.
Oh,
Like out of
heartbreaking.
all of that, he
No.
deals 3 damage. And I'm like, there's
Oh,
no
that's
way
rough.
this is happening. And because that one Armiger survived, like the dude only had Canis Rex, a Lancer, and the Armiger left. And so I was pretty comfy at this point. I'm like, I got it. Because I'm just on the points. I'm running away with the score. But that night surviving swung like 20 points or so.
Yeah, because super high OC, if they're doing
Yeah.
anything at all, yeah, it's
Yep. He auto passed his battle shock and was just like, I'm gonna walk onto this objective. And it got him like, I think it got him like tempting target, as well as this other thing. And it just denied me 5 and then something else. It was about 20 points that just brought the game that much closer. Otherwise,
yeah,
it would have been closer to like 60 to 80 or 60 to 90. So that was a win, but it was only like a 4-point win because
right.
of
I
that
got you.
one
Yeah,
Armiger. It was
it
just
just didn't need to
wild.
be that scary, but it was.
Yeah, exactly. It had no
Dude, I
cause to be that
find like
scary.
that's the thing with knights though, right? Like you can be in that driving seat, and those
Yeah.
armigers are weird, man. Like one weird flip, especially with the
Hmm.
Imperial Knights ones, is like anything can happen after that.
Yeah. And it actually it almost ended in complete disaster further. This is a little bit too in the weeds, but I was, I was looking, I was like, okay, there's only one combination of secondaries I could draw on my last turn that would make me not win this game. Like, and then we get to the new battle round. I roll, and Angron resurrects. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then I get to drawing my secondaries, and I drew the 2 that I would have not won the game on.
Amazing.
But because Angron came back, he allowed me to
You
get the
can
thing.
dump
And
his
I'm
ass
like,
somewhere. Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, that was wild. Like,
That ooh, that's not a good
no,
feeling.
no, but it worked out. It was
Yeah, it
just,
worked.
yeah,
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
crazy.
Nice.
Um, then the next match, round 3, was against an old teammate, Jesse, who is also a great Knight player. He's one of the really annoying players, and I'm sure World Eaters players around the world will feel this. He's one of those guys where when you tell them, hey, these infantry units have a 23-inch threat range before the charge on turn 1, under certain conditions. He goes, oh, and then he measures back. And I'm like,
Just
oh no,
changes
you
his
can
deployment
measure.
zone. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, as much as I'm teasing a bit from some players, but there are definitely players who you will explain your mechanics to, and they go, oh, got it, and then they just kind of deploy.
Oh
And
yeah,
I'm like,
no, for
all right,
sure. Like that's such a
yeah,
real thing. I mean, the way that I always say it is like most people don't think past 14 inches on the measuring tape because they're like, that's it. I don't need to worry
yeah,
past that, even though you tell them. And it's like the players who will measure out your 22, 23 and redo their deployment line to that line, and then you're like,
mhm,
oh, okay,
right,
we're in trouble.
yeah. And so he goes, all right, and this was I forget what it's the deployment, hammer and anvil or something. So he goes, oh, instead of 18-inch deployment, I have a 8-inch deployment zone. I'm like, no, you're smart. So
To
his
be
whole
fair, for
strategy,
knights, that like basically locks them out of their first turn of movement, though, right? You know, which is I don't necessarily hate it when some armies do that to me. Like Necrons, if it's not hypercrypt, it's like cool, you're gonna be slow walking for a
you're
while.
there.
Yeah.
And that's the exact competitive thing that we're doing. We are giving them it's almost like we are a puzzle for them to beat rather than for us to succeed at, where we're
Yeah.
like, here's the puzzle. I have this range. Do you want to risk being out of the game? But I could also get to you, and this is your choice to make, right? Um, so yeah, he chose to try and stay out, and that, I mean, it was hit in his mind. We talked a lot, right? So in his mind, he was saying, I will keep you out. I will just keep you at bay until I can move in at a time of my liking and shoot you and slowly get in position, because he had like a Castellan and stuff that could tap things and see everywhere. For me, because I had chaff, I had 2 spawns, I had 2 jackals, I was like, I'm fine with it. You can wait, you can stay there. No skin off my back, I'm cool. So
Yeah.
we
That's
did
that
that.
tempo play that we were talking about though, right? Where
Yep,
it's like you have the capacity to just be like, yep, cool, I can slow play too. And
yep.
it's working for me.
It's working for me. So I went to my comfort distance, kept people hidden for a couple of rounds. And it worked out. I mean, I ended up winning the game. Um, it Yeah, exactly as you said. It's just you're able to set the tempo because you have those early trades. He's gonna shoot and he'll sticky, and then he has to come get it. And as soon as he comes to get it, great, we're in the tier. Then I go, right? Then it's
Yeah.
like, okay, we're gonna eat this one thing. Like I was talking with another World Eaters player there who was kind of asking, like, he finds it hard to, when he'll start trading and then he slowly feels like he's losing the game, because they just pick up whatever he's traded. And I'm like, yeah, you have to hit, and I'm sure you know this, I'm sure you've talked about this. You either need to kind of go forward with everything or not much, right? Like very, very little or most everything.
Yeah, you're either like
Um,
sending one thing out to kill one thing,
yeah,
or you're like, I'm gonna put this game to bed in a single turn. You
yeah,
know? Like there isn't really an in between there, in my
right.
opinion.
Yep, 100%. Because if you do 2 or 3, they're gonna pick it up. Because give them 2 or 3 things to shoot at, they will successfully do so, right?
100%. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that game went kind of predictably that direction because I built the list to go that direction. So now we're 3 matches where the MOE would have done less than nothing. And
Nice. We like it. We like it.
the
Hey, if he went
MSU
into
strategy is
Canis,
working.
he'd have full rerolls and he might do like 8 damage and then he gets
Maybe.
stood on.
Yep. Yep, maybe. He might have
Yeah.
done 8. I think he feels maybe 6, right? So yeah, it was I was happy. All right, let's see. We'll keep it rolling. Next was Tyranids. This guy
Oh,
Dan
cool.
Morris, very good player. He I think normally plays Chaos Knights. So he was trying out Tyranids. he'd gotten like I think like a couple games in before this. He owned up. He was like, I'm not a super experienced Tyranid player. But he is just a good player, right? And I actually I find that people who jump around from faction to faction have a lot of a great perspectives on value and how to use the units that they have. So he was doing something I thought was really fun, or he was bringing I think 12 zoanthropes, and it was just a
Oh,
really
dude.
yeah. And he was seeing success from that because he normally turns like, oh, no anti-tank, and oh, zoanthropes are not great anti-tank, and he's like, well, what if you just bring enough that they are good? What if you bring enough that you can melt a big knight?
That
You
critical
know?
mass. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm a big fan of that kind of experimentation. So I was a really big fan of his list. I did something really dumb because again, every game I try and do something dumb, so
Nice.
that I can learn
Yeah.
something,
I
right?
respect it. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. So I turn one charge, 6 exalted into 2 Carnifexes and old one eye. But the dumb part
That's a
was
choice.
that, yeah, yeah. So the dumb part was that he had I didn't have any offense boosts. I didn't layer Angron in for rerolls. I didn't layer 8 bound in for rerolls to wound either. And I didn't have +1 to wound because it's turn 1 because I used it for an auto advance. So I was like, let's just see what happens. Wasn't good.
Nope.
It was
Nope.
bad.
Counterfexes with old one eye will kick the
Yep.
door in a big
Yep.
way.
So I just sort of lost that unit early. I think I killed 1 Carnifex and just like lost the unit. And I was like, that's all right. Because honestly, it was not a match that I felt I had a real chance of losing, you know?
Right. Yeah. You were comfortable.
I was comfortable. Like I'm a Tyranids player as well, so I know the army and I know what they can do, and I'm like, cool. I'll just run and tag Exocrines, and he doesn't have the gas. Ironically, I just need to kill some scoring and push him in. So that's what happened. It was just like I did some wacky stuff early for fun, and then and then I just sort of took the top half of the board. And he was focused on dealing with the Helbert, ironically enough, who kept charging like
Let's go.
zoanthropes. And yeah,
What
it
a
was pretty
dude.
fun. He was a legend there, actually.
Oh
Yeah.
man, that's
He
so
got
funny.
into the Helbert was messing around with a squad of 6 Zoans and a Maliceptor for like 2 rounds of that game. And they just kind of
That's so dumb.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Oh
but that's
dear.
the point of that unit, is that they can't just deal with it in one with anything like a Jackal squad, and it's more of a threat than spawn, so they actually have to work
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
So anyway, won that game was like 90-74 or so. So round 5, I fought a player who I don't know much about him. He was a Demons player. He was very friendly. And I really enjoyed that experience. I don't know how much people talk about their opponents, but I really want to give people credit for where it is, because it can be hard to,
Oh yeah, 100%.
yeah. Sometimes you get to a table and people are a bit brusque. Sometimes they're a bit, antisocial in various
Yeah, there
ways,
to play the
or
game rather than like,
yeah,
the
socialize.
social experience. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is fine. I'm not going to blame
Completely,
anyone, but
yeah.
this
Yeah.
this guy, like, before the game, kind of was like, "Oh, hey, you're Taylor, right? Like, I heard you're my opponent. I'm excited to play you. I heard you're a good World Eaters player, so this will be fun." I was, "Yeah, great." So he was really nice. Um, I also played Demons, um, which is not a very popular faction right now. I think last I looked, I think like I played like literally 4 events of Demons, and I think I'm still sitting top 5 with Demons because no one's
Oh
playing
gosh.
Demons right now. Like, okay.
All right.
But he was playing Demons. He was playing an off-meta Demons list, so I want to give him credit for that too. There was no Be'lakor, no Grid Unclean one,
Oh, that is
which
interesting. No Be'lakor. Wow.
no Be'lakor, yeah. Which I actually looked at his list and I thought, oh, I might be in trouble, because it was a ton of like Flamers and Fleshhounds and Nurglings. Well, actually, I don't think there's any Nurglings, which might have hurt him a bit. But he had like Soul Grinders and Demon Princes and Lord of Change, and that was kind of like the only big stuff. There's Blood Crushers and just lots of trading. I was like, whoa, he might have a really cool gimmick. Regardless of what his gimmick might have been in his other games, because he was also, he did pretty decent at the event. Regardless of that, unfortunately, his dice didn't like him
Oh, that's
at
rough.
all. Yeah.
That is a
There
lot.
was there was strategy stuff. He owned up to that. He was like, I should have put more on the board than I did because he kind of deep struck like half his army, and it just I don't know about you, but when my opponent deep strikes, like if they're putting less on the board, I'm usually happy with it because then either I
Yeah.
just overrun them and I have no fear of reprisal early on because
Yeah,
they're
because
not there.
it's like a double-edged sword almost, where it's like you have
Yeah,
the speed to push out and zone out their deep strike,
yeah,
but then you're also not stressed about like the hit back because you're like, well, half the stuff's in the sky, so
yep.
life is good.
Life is good if you go first, especially. It's like it's fine.
Yeah,
I can own this board state as much as I want. I can push. So that's what unfortunately he did. We took a picture at one point because Angron went into a demon prince of Nurgle, who's a walk prince in demons, who had a one phase three up invuln.
oh
Um,
yes, I played that guy. Yeah, he's wild.
he's wild, and he had gift of Nurgle, right? Or the endless gift or whatever it is. So he had 3 up, 4 up. He was technically out of the zone for the 4 up, but for fun, we decided to see just what it was like because at this point the game was pretty heavily over. And I like to do that, right? Like if the game's kind of a runaway, it's like I'm not going to be like I'm going to minimize your points and punish you. You
Yeah,
know, it's
you
like
have
well,
some fun,
let's have
like
fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we were just like, well, let's roll it with the 4 up and see what happens. He rolled 9 saves. He passed 3 of them.
Oh
With
gosh.
the 3 up.
On the 3 up inbound, nice.
Yeah. And then he took an obscene amount of damage. I mean, it was like 28 damage or something. And then he like passed like a paltry amount of 4 ups. It was like 30% maybe. I mean, the dude got bipped.
That is a
And
vibe.
yeah, we like both. I was like, "Do you want a picture of this?" He's like, "No one ever believes me," and I'm like, "Let's take a picture. I'll share it with the world." Um, but he was a great guy. So that was Demons. So I was fortunate that I wasn't playing some of the people again. Like there were more GT winners at that event than there were rounds at the event. So
Right. Yeah.
I was like, well, I'm having a fun time. I already took my loss. I'm just here to roll some bones and have fun. So my last match was oh, sorry, one quick note about the Demons game. He took behind enemy lines and deploy as
Right.
fixed.
Pretty common
And
take for demons, but it can kind of weirdly be a mistake against us?
yeah, sure can. It sure was. um
Like,
and
yeah, welcome. Welcome into my deployment zone where there are the homies.
come on in. Yep.
Yeah.
Now his list was good for it because he had all those small pieces,
The
and I was like,
trash.
well,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that was like that's pretty good. That said, I had 2 squads of jackals, and because he didn't start much on the board, I didn't need to send too much up on the board, so I screened out the board really. Like I took probably like 30 minutes of the game time in my first move phase, just setting up my jackals like to line the deployment in exactly the way to prevent the 3-inch deep strike. So it was brutal, but super fun game. And then I fought Geo, who is a Vanguard Tactics guy, who was running I don't know what to call them, ultramarine shooty stuff. You
Right.
know when your opponent just has a bunch of tanks and you're like, I don't know what that is, and
Yeah,
I'm just gonna run it.
the marine thing.
Yeah. And then they're like, this is an onslaught, Gatling, twin linked, blah blah blah, anti-infantry, sustain 2. And I'm like,
It's
I
like when people start shooting the repulsor, I'm like, all right, just tell me when it's done.
yeah, tell me when
Yeah.
it's done. I'm gonna go to the
Yeah.
bathroom. You let me know. So many bullets. So and mentally sometimes you do that thing where you're like, haven't he already shot that? And you're like, no, it was different.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know. Um, so I spent a lot of time uh doing round 1 move to make sure I was safe. And it was a fun game where he's like, oh, you're overthinking it, man. You're over worrying about it. And I'm like, I make sure I'm not exposing myself like I did that Tau game.
Yeah, it's like
Like
I learned that mistake
yeah,
real quick in that other
yeah.
game.
I could be a bit of a sloppy player sometimes when I'm but I was like, I should probably take this seriously because he was a strong player. So I was like, okay, let me make sure I'm all good. He's like, no. And it was really funny because the script flipped later on because I was by turn 4, I'm like in his face, because we hit the go turn, um, where I was able to stage well enough and get everyone in
Yeah.
to where I wanted. And he's like sitting there sweating about who you should shoot and all this stuff. And I'm like, you're taking it too seriously, man. Don't worry about it.
Shoes on the other foot now, boy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nice.
So that was
That's funny.
enjoyable. But I love the face on people when you tell them about your units in the beginning and they logically understand. And then they see that 3-man exalted squad pick up a repulsor or whatever. And they're
It's
like,
all, dude, it's always
what's its
them.
strength?
Yeah,
Yeah,
strength
yeah,
15.
always them. Yeah. And they're like, why? And
I think it
I'm
was
like,
like on that. I was watching the stream of Brian in the finals in CTC when he's playing the Bully
uh,
Boys guy, and the 8-bound went in. And Brian was like, "The strength 15." He's like, "Yeah, but what strength are they?" He's like, "No, 15." He's like, "Are you joking?" It's like
because there's no reason for it, right? Like,
it's just dumb. Yeah.
it's the most pointless strength value.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's also fun. I mean, that was an interesting game. I played around Gilman's Resurrection, I thought fairly well. Keeping him, I killed him and then kept him sort of prisoner in his own castle. So that
Yeah.
because ideally he would have wanted to spawn further south so that he could go impact some of the board where my Hellbrute came and held a side objective for me. Shout out to the Hellbrute. But killed a Brutalis Dreadnought.
No, no way, really?
Yeah, yeah, fucked it up.
It's like him, but twice the size.
Yeah. But he goes in with his 6 attacks on the charge and twin linked, and he's not doing bad. He's getting exploding 6s because that's what I'm doing at the time. And then the Brutalis punches back and he punches back again. And it's just like, uh-oh. And it took 2 turns. And so 2 turns and 4 rounds of combat effectively. But hey, listen, it
Yeah, it's
doesn't.
literally just like a boxing match down in one corner,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Um,
That's so
but
cool.
yeah, it was just that was a game of pure uh terrain hopping, right? Just to get to where
Yeah.
you need to go and then hit that gas. So ended up winning that. Was like 165. And yeah, I mean, I had fun. I had fun. I had a good run. I'm talking about the games a bit like I'm sure people are thinking, oh, there's obvious foolish moves. An opponent should never do X or Y, but they were pretty solid players, right? Like there are players there who I think were like, no, this so these Knights guys are way better than you would expect a Knights player to be. And
Yeah.
one of them had maybe the wrong strategy, but they were very solid, and the Ultramarines were also solid. It's just that our army, when played right, when you're setting that tempo, you can't. Sometimes the puzzle just they don't have the tools to solve it.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, I actually really like how you put it, that our army is often a puzzle for the other player to figure out. I think that's like
Yeah,
completely correct. And I think the problem with the puzzle is that sometimes you're like solving half of it, but it causes a different problem, you know?
yeah,
Like the perfect example is that Knights one, right? Where it's like, yeah, you can deploy that far back if you want to, but you're now out of the game until turn 3, right?
yeah,
Or I can set up in this place because I've got an angle, but I risk getting blood surged into.
yeah.
Or, all these other different scenarios that can happen. It's like, yeah, you've hit me with these exalted 8-band. If I fail my leadership check now, the game's over, you know?
I That, by the way, came into play quite a bit with Tau, which even though I lost the match, still mattered, and then Knights
Leadership
as
7
well.
on Tau, baby. Never forget.
Yeah, never forget. It's
Yeah.
relevant. The Exalted 8-band have shown up for me quite a lot, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I think it like you can play against really good players, but to play a perfect game against world leaders requires quite a lot of like in-game mental acuity and in-game like, mental exhaustion as well. Because like all it takes is one mistake in the world leaders player to see it, and the game can immediately be over, you know?
Yep, yep,
And like that can be a positioning mistake or it can be a target priority mistake. It can be a lot of different things. And as
yeah,
long as the world leaders pilot is like cognizant of those mistakes and knows how to capitalize on them, like I think you put it really well where it's like on your commitment turn, you're either going with like one thing or you're going with everything, And
yeah,
it's stuff like that where it's kind of like once you've got those like, training wheels off and you're able to like kind of make those plays, you're going to be in a really good place, not necessarily regardless of opponent skill, but even against high caliber opponents, you can really put on a good show, I think.
yep, yep. No, absolutely. I mean, you nailed it. It's I will admit my dark secret. Here's my dark secret, my confession. I took a break from World Eaters a little bit, a little while ago, begin to play Demons, just because I felt like I was a bit too much of an NPC army. Where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to impact this very little, but it's up to you to figure out if you can beat me. And I've come back around to it, but yeah, it's I have encountered two players who are very good locally at solving that puzzle, unfortunately. And I almost don't want to put out there why or how.
Yeah, no.
I don't want more people to do it. So
Don't
uh,
manifest that energy. Yeah, I found the same. I
yeah.
was like looking at my stats and tabletop battles today. I'm like, oh, there's like a 30% difference in my practice games versus my tournament games,
Uh,
favoring my tournament games. I'm like, I went to the boys and I was like, we need to talk. Like, whatever you figured out, don't tell anyone else.
yeah, don't tell anyone that.
Yeah, yeah. It is an interesting one.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's like the next, you know, stage for you? Like, are you gonna hang
Yeah.
around on World Leaders? You're gonna experiment
Oh
with
yeah.
different armies, and yeah, like what's on your mind? What's the next target?
I mean, I'm gonna always play other armies because I feel like I get a good sense of value. I notice, especially in online discourse, people will have a warped sense of what strong is. They will go, "Oh, that Chaos Space Marine possessed blob can kill anything in the game," and I'm like, "No, they can't.
Yeah,
They have 4 spawn attacks. What are you talking about? You know,
yeah,
not they can't. Exalted can kill anything in the game virtually, but not even right. There's things that they can't kill." Or things that are like, oh, Khorne of Skulls, like I'll take that and it'll be super tanky and no one will kill it. I'm like, people can kill 2 big knights in a turn.
yeah.
They're not, like,
That ain't
so
real.
it ain't real. So I'm always gonna try playing. Like, I might mess around with Chaos Space Marines a bit. I think that we are actually positioned really well into orcs and Chaos Space Marines, especially if Renegade Raiders is the thing that they do.
Dude, 100%.
Um,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I think
I
Renegade
haven't,
Raiders are gonna get like found out by a lot of World Leader players, you know?
yeah.
Where it's just like, yeah, you can run on that objective and shoot me. I've got Blood Surge. And by the way, all my
Yeah,
units hit way harder than yours.
way harder. I mean,
Yeah.
so I might go back towards Berserkers because of Renegade Raiders. If it's really popular, because I think Renegade Raiders, I think Berserkers are a great counter to it. I think you can plant a spawn on the back edge of that objective, bubble wrap the objective with some Berserkers, essentially, right? And just
Yeah.
be like, what do you want to do? Do you want to get out of that Rhino and shoot my spawn and charge the Berserkers, where I might fight first? Or do you want, like,
Yeah.
there's no
It's
good
all
answer
bad
that they have?
all bad
Yeah.
choices. Yeah. Yeah.
And even then, your spawn don't care about their AP. You're making 4 outfield no fans. It doesn't matter.
Dude,
Like,
right?
those warp talons, 10 warp talons are not killing 8 bound. Like,
Yeah.
they're killing 2 or 3, I think.
Yeah. Also the like whole warp talent thing is like that's the one for me where it's like Mo with Battle Loss, where it's just like I'll just position correctly, and then those warp
Yeah,
talents will have to deal with a heroic king fight first 10-man berserker squad,
yeah,
and they won't be able to deal with that, so it's
yeah.
they just don't
Because
exist anymore.
at the end of the day, they're Marines. Like, yeah, they have a
Yeah,
fight with Binvoln, but it
yeah.
doesn't.
Like who
Most
cares about a
APs
5
too.
Minville on
Yeah,
marine bodies?
yeah. So I think we have a great game into Renegade Raiders. So if that's super popular, great. I'm definitely sticking with World Eaters. I mean, I'll still be playing them regardless. World Eaters are it's what got me into 40K back when I was in high school. It was
Yeah,
just like 4th or 5th edition Warhammer, and it was Khorne the Betrayer memes, and I was all about it. So I'll
nice.
still play them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Soulforge pack looks fun. So I might go more MSU. I think that's my strategy.
It seems to
Honestly,
work. Yeah.
is lean hard into Berserkers, or just break up my 6/8 Exalted into maybe a extra. Yeah, I could trade out a couple things. I have a list posted up somewhere in Discord. I trade things, get a Mauler Fiend, and get a third regular 8 bound squad, and just kind of have all those pieces that overkill most of what they fight anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
makes sense.
anyway, I ended BAO. I got like 14th or so, which is unfortunately I broke my legacy I was trying to build.
Listen,
I will do worse next year. It's my commitment.
that's the goal. It can't all be perfect. Oh man, it was great. I really enjoyed that chat, Taylor. Thank you so much. Is there anyone you want to shout out, any clubs or anything before we close this one out?
Sure, yeah. Mad Alpaca Games, like an angry alpaca. They're a local club in Fairfield over here in California. Very great store. The owner's wonderful, and all the events they do. I mean, it's just very competitive. You'll go to an RTT and come out sweating bullets because the players there are like all GT winners, and you're just like, this is stressful.
Nice.
But it's great to cut your teeth on, practice new lists with. So if anyone's in the area, I encourage you to check that store out. And then, just shout out to some of my buddies, all the people who've gone there. I mean, Floof, Forrest, Adam, like all amazing players who are tops of their factions, who go to these local events and play. They do a great job of enriching the environment because they're also all very friendly. And I think
That's
that
what you
that's
want to see.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I think for a while, a lot of communities, at least my community, had a bit of a toxic time in ninth where there was a lot of clashing and near the end of ninth. Um, but everyone has really come together, and I hope more Warhammer communities can have
That's awesome.
friendly communities where everyone's cheering for each other.
Yeah. Makes the game a lot better to play, a lot more fun, and
Yeah.
community a lot better as well. But yeah, it's been awesome, man. I really enjoyed the chat. And
Cool.
as always, everyone, you can catch Taylor, known as Trout, in the Discord. So there's the Red Path one, there's the World Leaders one. You're pretty active in both of those. If
Yeah.
people want to pick your brain further on how you managed to make a Hellbrute work, which I'm sure people will after this, because I love the energy. But yeah, so for now though, that is going to be it for this one. As always, folks, you need the usual stuff like comment, subscribe, all that, and the links down below are where you can support us or find the Discord. So until the next one, I've been Dara. This has been Taylor. You've been watching the Red Path, so stay healthy, stay safe, kill main bird.